Hey everyone, and welcome to another Behind the Cache workshop live hangout or live workshop hangout. Today's going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be doing a build, which is fine because I have an excellent guest. We're going to be talking 3D printing, and I have the designer that designed this cache that I did in the last video. Absolutely love this cache, but he's got some different stuff, and he's going to show us some different ways that we can do this, and also some designs that we're going to be doing. So without further ado, let me welcome Owen. Owen, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, we've already got, all right, so Bill on the move. Andrew is out here. He's from California. I'm waiting on several others that are going to be on here really shortly. We are just, usually we come on at let's see, it's 2 Central. Usually we're on at 3 Central, but because you're in the UK, I figured it'd be better for us to go ahead and do it at 2, just because of that. And also, those that are at Texas Challenge this weekend, I hope you guys are having a great time at Texas Challenge. I know you'll be watching this later. I had several messages come in. It's like, oh, we're going to have to be watching this later. Darren from Australia is on. Good morning. Sunday morning there in Australia. Thank you for joining us. So, Owen, some people may not know who you are. And I mean, they know if they've watched my videos, they've seen this before. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into doing the 3D printing?
So I'm Owen. I'm a geocacher in the UK. So it's about 7 p.m. over here. I got into both geocaching and 3D printing because my little brother. So my little brother introduced me to geocaching in 2015.
Okay.
And he knew that I had done a very small amount of 3D printing at university and asked, oh, can you make a cryptex? So I designed a cryptex. I went to print it, saw that people were quoting £100 to get it printed on a web service. I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I joined a local makerspace where I was at university. So it's a subscription-based community centre which had multiple 3D printers, and I could learn how it worked and all that stuff. And I still haven't made him that cryptex. It's I got distracted and made hundreds of other designs and hundreds of other caches, but never actually printed him that cryptex he wanted.
Well, you don't even have to design that. You can just go to Thingiverse and download it now and print it. I was trying to do that. I think Dave Wagner has, I believe it's like almost like a cryptex for a preform or
Yes, yeah. Petling. Yes.
Yeah, Petling. Yeah. Trying to remember. So, we call them preforms. Y'all call them something else over there.
So this is based off the design I designed for Harry, but I never released these designs. I never printed his cache, but it's it's similar to the hexadecimal one on Thingiverse. So the hexadecimal one is a smaller version of this.
Okay.
I designed that 5 years ago. So.
Oh wow.
Not a fantastic design. There's a few things I would have changed if I made it again, but maybe I'll add that to the list of things I can design. So well, a lot of the early designs I did were they could hold a log, and that was pretty much it. And I'm starting to move either into more detailed prints or larger prints that can hold more stuff in them, which is why another reason why that cashew printed is so much larger than a normal maze is because I wanted people to be able to put swag in it.
Right, and I love the size of this one. I love the other one too, and I have it. There's a little bit of light green back here on the back over here. Well, that's it back there. I love that one. That was actually the first geocache I printed when I got my 3D printer. So that one has some sentimental value for me, and absolutely love it.
I love that design just because of the bark effect. I can't do organic stuff, and just the bark effect and natural looking camo that's 3D printed, I still find fantastic.
That looks really cool. I like the size of this one. That's what it really interested me in this one was the size, but then of course the quick reset on it. That was absolutely fantastic because that was with any of the 3D printed mazes that I'd done in the past. I had never seen a reset like this, and that's what absolutely amazed me. And then when I started putting it together, the buttons are magnets, and I love magnets anyways, and that's what I thought was really great.
Well, I
Now I
learned
got to
that
take it apart so I can show
from
it, but
a Geocache talk using magnets as a catch for a larger build. I forgot what episode it was. It was several several gadget build. Before you had the gadget talk, you had someone, I forgot his name, but he had magnets and 3D printed catch, but it was for a pill bottle that came down.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that was Dave Wagner. Dave
Yeah,
Wagner, DJW House has it, and I have a couple of those back here for Cache Fest that he sent me. And yeah, when it releases, it repels it back up,
yeah.
and that I love that because I mean it's a lot easier because when you were originally designing this, did I see as either you were telling me or I saw something that you originally had, was it springs or something like that you were trying, or
I never used springs. Just I thought a spring would work, but I think magnets is a more elegant design, and I think it was when I saw Dave's design, I was like, that would work, and then that kind of snowballed into I can now design that without springs using magnets, and it makes it design so much easier.
yeah, and I love it. And of course, I'm sitting here trying to talk to you at the same time and trying to solve it at the same time, and I'm not doing very well on either. I had it apart earlier, and I should have just left it apart. But so tell us the process of when you're designing one of these caches. What's the process that you go through when you're doing that?
So the first thing is how strong is it going to be, and how many times am I going to have to replace it? So I have two different type of designs I do now. It's detailed designs that are based on real life things, so a telephone box or puzzles. And it's either I get really detailed on a telephone box or a post box, or I want to create a puzzle that's going to be strong, easy to print, but also easy to put back together.
Right.
So I had a field puzzle that was a dovetail sphere, which I found that people could open it after a while, but it took maybe 5-10 times as long to put it back together.
Okay.
And that was one of the things of, okay, I need to start thinking of how to design puzzles that are hard to solve, but easy. No, yeah, hard to solve, but easy to reset. And that's
Right.
why I did this maze. And one of the things to remember with these large mazes where you can have swag is to make sure you put a lid on it.
Right.
So I
got it apart. So, oh, good gosh, this one's huge.
So this is one of my oldest 3D printed geocaches. So this was for a mega event here in the UK.
That's a maze too.
And this was, what was that? Sorry.
That's a maze as well too, isn't it?
Yes, that is it. Yeah, it's a maze that spells the mega name. It's called Geolympics.
Oh, that is really cool.
So this is actually made out of ABS as well, which is very hard to print. But I found when I was testing this, it was replacing a cache that was already placed for 24 hours for the mega event, and then being replaced back with a previous container. What I found is any swag in here was blocking it. So anyone trying to open a maze, where you have to go back onto yourself, the swag was causing a jam.
Oh wow!
So that's why I've added lids to all my mazes. So
right, and I'll show that real quick here. So here it is. Here's the maze actually apart, and there's that quick reset. There's the inside here, and then of course the lid. This kind of goes right in here, and that just goes in there, so nothing can get blocked in there now. And I just, like I said, that is just such a beautiful and elegant design of this. And then what I was also talking about with the buttons, see if I can get it to focus. So here's, see if I can keep it in focus right here. And of course, I should have done the buttons in different colors that you can see it, but you can kind of see in here. So it's just done by magnets that repel. And these are super small magnets. I don't know how many I shot across the room as I was trying to do this. And I couldn't find the exact magnets that you said on Thingiverse. So mine are probably a little bit thinner. So what I did is I took a little bit of tape and put it around there and jammed it in there. So that's, once again, just kind of think of different ways to do stuff. Stuart Howe says, love finding 3D printed caches in the wild. However, I found the larger ones regularly get damaged. Have you seen that, Owen, or but the bigger ones get damaged, or is that just maybe possibly the filament that they're using, or what's your opinion on that?
I have to be honest, I haven't placed any of my large caches out.
Oh,
I've designed loads, but I never placed. I know. So this one, there's one of these in Germany, and that seems to have survived over a year.
okay.
So that seems to survive well, but this one isn't a puzzle cache, and that's one of the things is with the large mazes. That's another reason why I've done 3 locking pins.
Okay.
It's sharing a load across 3 pins. I used to design mazes which only had 1 pin, so it was still probably 5 inches high and probably 2.5 inches diameter, and that had a maze like that out for several years, and that didn't seem to get too damaged, and that was in the city centre. So it's one, making sure the filament's correct, the printing conditions are correct,
Right.
that the locking pins, especially on the mazes, are quite thick.
Right.
And one of the things I do when I print is I use a 0.6mm nozzle and make the wall perimeter 1.8mm.
Okay.
So that is quite a thick wall, and so
Right.
it takes quite a lot of pressure and force to break open.
Right. Yeah, because that's when you first start printing, you don't know. It's a lot of it's trial and error, and sometimes your wall will be a lot thinner when you're just printing different things and not really knowing all the settings. So as you're saying, getting further into it, you learn that, hey, this is going to break. Let's go ahead and change it here. This is real crazy. So Chad Bounce Mounts has a question for you, and he says, how are you venting your room where your printer is when you're printing with ABS?
So this one that was printed with ABS was actually in the makerspace.
Okay.
So this was a large factory setting. I started, and when I got my Ender 3, I started with ABS and quickly switched to Hetchy. One, ABS isn't fantastic for larger prints, and I didn't have an enclosure. So this container wasn't printed in a enclosure or anything like that. So that's an issue with ABS. But with venting, it's large room and making sure windows open. So as I had a printer at home, I quickly stopped using it. ABS. Right. I had it in a separate room. I closed the door, and I kept, after I finished printing, I'd open the window,
right,
and let it vent out. But I wouldn't print while I was sleeping because my bedroom's across the corridor, so I wouldn't do it when I was upstairs. So it would be printing in a room upstairs away from me, and I wouldn't print at night, and that's one because ABS the fumes aren't great, and it can cause a few issues.
Right. Right.
I know a few people were worried about pets and stuff. So I'd say if you have pets, don't use ABS at all, or keep it in the garage away from any pets or away from any sleeping bedrooms or anything.
Right. So Mike F is saying, how strangely prophetic. I just found my first fully printed cache today. That is awesome. I still haven't. Well, I take that back. I have found one that was printed, fully printed. I just remembered that I found it, but I've only really found 1 or 2. They're starting to get more out there. And I saw earlier Dan Truckenmiller's son, Dan the Truck, is in here. He was saying, "Hey y'all," and he has started those that are 3D printing. It is 3D printing for geocaching or geocaching for 3D printers, or one of the two. And I'll have the link here in the description later, and also in the video that when I showed these 3D caches. I had the link in there as well, so you can always go check that out. It's a really great group, and it has grown a lot in the last year. And of course, Owen's in it. I know Chad's in it, and Bounce is in there as well. So, and then Chad says, thanks. That's cool. I need to find a makerspace because he does. Chad, you've got venting. I know you do. But he's got 2 printers, 2 resin printers, another printer on the way. So come on. Anyway, you are a makerspace. What are you talking about? But he was also asking, and I know we were talking beforehand, Owen, but Chad's also asking, what type of printer do you have for your larger prints, and what are you using?
So this ABS one was printed on a Lowell's Bot TAS 6, which I would never hope to afford. Lowell's Bots are notoriously expensive, but the Makerspace was sponsored. So that's one of the other benefits of the Makerspace is they've got the money behind it to have quite large machines. But this one I printed on an Ender 3 Max. So an Ender 3 is fairly common for beginner 3D printers, 3D printer enthusiasts, whereas 220 by 220 by I think 220. The Ender 3 Max is 300 by 300 by 340. So it's just that bit much bigger, which means you can start fitting things in. This cache is still too tall to fit on the printer, which I had to print just this section, and then this extra bit here was done separately. One, because it was too big to fit on the printer, but 2, it saved time and support material.
Now that last one you just showed, we were talking before. It's 3 parts once again.
Yes.
So
yeah.
And that's also, and you were telling me that the one that I printed here, this was the prototype for that one, correct?
Yes. One of the reasons why it's hexagonal. So this is based on a British postbox. So it's a Victorian postbox. One of the first postboxes around, really. But so we've got 3 parts. You've got the black, the center part, and this top part. So the top part is very intricate with a floral design, spheres all the way around. So if I printed it whole, it would add an extra 24 hours to the print time, and I think half a kilogram of support material.
Right.
So I chopped that off and just printed it separately, and it saved me time and quite a lot of filament.
Wow, that's really cool. I love that, and I love the designs and intricate designs that you've done. And I know a lot of people are wondering how are you designing these? We're talking. I already know the answer to this, but those that are watching don't. I've used Tinkercad. I'm starting to learn Fusion 360. So tell us what you started off with, and then what you're using now, and just kind of go through that. And if there's anything that you could show us in your program, we can share your screen or anything like that. We can see. I forgot. We forgot to test that beforehand. It's okay. It's live. Anything goes wrong, it's going to happen live anyways. We're good. But yeah, and just kind of tell us what you use, and maybe even show us some tricks that you use to help with the designs.
So I started my 3D modeling. I started with SolidWorks. So this is when I was still at university and has a SolidWorks license, and I needed it for a project. So that's where I was introduced to it. Once I left university, I started using Fusion 360, which is free for hobbyists or educational use. So it's similar to SolidWorks. It's very much engineering based. So if it's buildings or very technical objects, Fusion 360 is great for it. But organic isn't great. So I can't do animals or trees or anything like that, but I can do buildings pretty well, just because I don't know how to do that in Fusion 360. Blender is very good. So Blender, if you want to do 3D model a person or an animal or anything, Blender is very good for that.
Right. And you're saying Blender, right? Yes,
Blender, Blender. Right.
And I've used Blender for even at one time I was working on some video animation with using Blender. And so that's also a free program. That one is free.
Yep.
And I will find the link for it here shortly and drop that in there. I have dropped the link in for the Facebook group, and it's called 3D Printing for Geocaching. Wow, only 12 people shy of being at 1,000 members of that group now, and it just about a year and a half ago I think is when it started. So that's pretty good. And that's Dan is the admin on that one, and I'm looking on. Oh, and you posted something here an hour ago. Oh, that you're going to be on here. Never mind. So yeah, and just kind of seeing your prints there, and I'm just looking at all of them. Yeah, such great work, and I know you've done printing for Geocache Talk and had some stuff in there as well. Sorry, I'm reading a comment here from Andrew Bell on the Move. It's probably going to show up someplace at Cache Fest. Where I don't know. It'll probably make it. I have a couple empty ammo cans up there that it will probably go in. So Andrew, yes, it will be someplace. But where was I? So yeah, Fusion 360, and that's what I like about Fusion 360 is that as I've been kind of starting to get to play with it, you design your aspect as a drawing or an SVG, and then you can just add the extrusion to it. It does take a little bit to get used to it. I've noticed. So, can you show us anything in Fusion?
Yeah.
60?
So just quickly, another thing is someone asked how I printed the large ones. So if it's very large, I always split things into smaller pieces. One, it saves time. Basically, I can put a print on, do a bit of it. But also, so that large maze is actually printed in 10 separate parts. And this is a failure because it's split. And so if you're splitting things into smaller chunks, if you've got a failure, you're wasting less material. Because if it's failed at the top, I'd have to reprint the entire thing. And so that's why I like slicing things into smaller chunks, just so if anything does go wrong, I'm not wasting time and material.
Right.
So
and then I just dropped in I'm adding that to the stream right now, and I just dropped in the link for Blender, and there's just blender.org. There's some really fun stuff, and that's open source, and it's a lot of fun. It's been out for a while, and I didn't realize that you could design stuff for 3D printing. I thought it was just pretty much for animation. So that's really cool. I like that. All right, so as we're looking at this design, I'm going to make it go full screen. So tell me about what we're looking at here.
So this is a British telephone box. So one of the first things I look at in the design is there any symmetry? So as you might be able to tell, is I've actually only designed a quarter of this telephone box and then rotated it around 4 times. So I can put all my time in one side, and then as soon as I know, oh, that's as far as I want to go, I can then just do create pattern, circular pattern, and I can just rotate it around the center axis. So I can put and then I just delete with it stuff I don't want. So that's one of the ways I can get very detailed parts. So if you go in here, there's parts here that would never get printed if you stuck with a 0.4mm nozzle.
Right.
But if someone wanted to scale this up, I know that they can download it, scale it up, and those details which people might not care about, but I do, are still in there. So so I can put as much time in this as I want, knowing that all the details are there, so anyone who wants to make it slightly larger.
Now on the crown and all that, are you importing like an SVG, or what are you doing on that?
DXF.
DXF, okay.
Yeah, so if you can go in here, SVG is okay, DXF, but I always do this last because Fusion 360, you don't need a powerful computer or laptop. So I've designed all my designs on a very old laptop, 7 years old, cheap, no graphics card or anything like that. So the last thing I do is put the DXF in, because this is a DXF of about 1,000 points, or no, 10,000 points. So then it slows down my laptop. So I always do that last, make sure everything else is so detailed, and take that out. I've done similar thing on. So I'm currently working on a series of Great British Icons, which is why I've got telephone boxes and post boxes. So same here, I've got a DXF for a crown and lettering up here. This is all just extruded. So I click what I want and click extrude and just extrude it how far I want.
Okay. And you, when you came in, you had that as sliced in half, or were you just looking at?
I was making sure the clearances were okay. So I knew that I was doing this in two. So this part is 3 separate parts. You've got the lid down here, which has can hold a bison.
Okay.
And I know that I'm going to print this part in one color and this other bit here.
Okay, so that's just an insert. That's just an insert that's going in there.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure this clearance was okay and I wasn't clashing with anything. But this is one of the things which Fusion is really good at. I can go in, do different slices, make sure that nothing's clashing, so it will fit together when I print it.
Wow. And then when you're putting your pieces together, like how this one is, what type of glue are you using? Because I know some people may be asking.
I use PETG glue.
PETG glue. Okay.
Glue. So it's GLOOP. So they do PLA glue, PETG glue, and some other gloops. It's just what they call it. So if you search for glue, with a P on the end.
Okay. Yeah, because I know I've used. I'm trying to find it on my shelf right now as I'm looking across it. I've used the acrylic weld because it's plastic and it actually welded as well. I've used that and that seemed to work. But I'm always looking at what others are using to be able to do this because we all have different supply chains, especially those who are different around the world. Of course, you're in the UK, I'm in here in the US. And
glue is really hard to get hold of in the UK. I came across a supplier, I thought, I'll get that, but there's only one supplier in the UK. I know it's made in the US, but the warning labels on it, I was surprised it was able to get it in the UK.
Okay. So, and it's just, I'm just looking at your design here, and the design that you've put in this looks so cool, so intricate. How long does it take you to do one of these designs typically?
Several days. So this is in the evenings. So this is just a run through of how I'm designing it.
Oh, wow.
So one of the things of Fusion 360 is that you can press play and see how you've designed it, all the steps. So everyone can see all my mistakes I've done, or where I've done something and gone back in and didn't want to destroy something, as I've done several workarounds to get around it.
Well, that's just part of it. I mean, even with the kids that I'm teaching, and they're used to hearing this. I tell them, okay, I want you guys to fail, because when you fail, that's when you're going to learn, and that's it's constantly. So you're not failing; you're just finding a different way of not doing it. So and a lot of times it is trial and error, and that's us gadget builders and all that. We fail all the time and try and figure out new workarounds and everything like that. Anyway, so that's just, I think that's amazing, and I love that. How I didn't know that Fusion 360 did that. Doing that. That's just really cool.
Yeah,
I love watching.
Yeah, it's just down here. The problem is I'll get something that I know works, and what I'll do is I'll import it as a new design, and then suddenly undo all I've done just to save that one part that did work. So it's, say I did a try start thread that seemed to work quite well, and now I now import that in all my designs. So that's another thing that Fusion 360 is great at doing, is these bodies down here, this bit down here is actually 2 derivations. So I know that this TriStart works really well for me, so I can import it as a new design. So if I go down,
Yeah, this is just really cool. I love this process. These I do watch geocaching videos, but a lot of times I watch these design videos a lot of times too, just because I love trying to learn this process.
so what I've just done is I've imported the inner thread and the outer thread, and any design I want to make now that has a TriStart thread, so a similar thread to what's on a Coke bottle or something, which makes it easier for anyone to open. I know that will work now. I don't need to refiddle with that at all. It will work out of the box, so I can just design around that.
And that's great that you have a library of parts that you can go ahead and go into too.
Yeah, so I've got quite a few. I'm not sure. So and now, yeah, so the TriStart thread is now on a lot of my builds, just because I know that works quite well. So I'll try and find out where I've got try and open another one.
So, and anybody that's in the chat, if you have any questions for Owen, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get to them here in a little bit. Andrew Bell on the Moose says, failing towards success, LOL. Yep, that's what we do all the time. Dave says, I keep fighting it, but I really need to take a leap and learn Fusion 360. So many features.
Yep.
Yeah, Dave, I agree. I'm trying to learn it myself. But what you do in Tinkercad, Dave, is absolutely amazing. Being able to use that program. I wish I could do what you do in that. And then just seeing now what Owen's doing here in 360, that it's just, it's like stepping stones. And it's just really, really, really cool seeing this. Oh, that's that one that you had up there earlier.
Yeah. So similar to, so I designed this part here as a segment of 6 and just rotate it around 6 ways. So I could spend as much time on this, knowing, well, actually, I could put the time in now to get this right and just rotate it around 6 times. And one of the things, what you might see is there's a part on the actual printed one that isn't. So that isn't on the Fusion 360.
Okay.
I can't design. Again, that's meant to be a crest that has a lion, it's a coat of arms with a unicorn and a lion. I can't design that. So what I did is got a photo of that and put it in Cura, which is the slicing software, to create a STL. So I used the different colors and the contrast to create a 3D image. And I used Tinkercad to combine that STL with an STL of this postbox together to create one design. So I'm using Fusion 360 for most of it, and then using Tinkercad and 3D Builder to combine everything together.
Yep, and that's I've done that with like video editing. I'll use one thing for this part of it because I like how this does this, and that's really cool. Just being able to combine your tools. It's a toolkit, and that's what you're doing. Yep. You're just combining that toolkit, just like a woodworker. We got our different saws for different jobs, and these different things work really well. I was thinking of, so I heard you mention Cura. Is that the slicing program that you use?
That's what I use, yes.
Okay. So I know a lot of people use either Cura or they use the Prusa slicer. I've started using Prusa. I've noticed that it actually has sped up my prints a little bit. But that's my experience. I don't know. We all have our own ones that we like, and Dave and Chad kind of turned me to the dark side for you, maybe light side for them. I don't know.
I always say use what you're comfortable with. I know that. So I'm used to Cura because that's what the Lulzbot printers used in the makerspace.
Right. Okay.
And that's what I learned, and that's how I know what I can tweak in that to make it work. So Yes, and I've got settings I can use, and I know exactly what will work for me. I don't know if those settings are available in Prusa or any other slicers.
Right.
And I know that I think Prusa seems to be quicker generally. So there's one of the features I like on Cura though is fuzzy skin. Have
Yes.
you come
Yeah.
across? Yeah, so I've designed an acorn before
Oh, let me
where
pull that up.
it looks completely smooth. But what I
Right.
do is I print this top section here with fuzzy skin,
Okay.
so it gives the appearance of a texture of an acorn. So I don't need to model that in because I know that Cura can do fuzzy skin.
Right.
Again, it's usually knowing exactly what my slicer can do.
Right. And like I said, once again, that's kind of taking that aspect of knowing your tools and how they work and being able to do that. I think Prusa has fuzzy skin, and Dave's in the chat, so he can confirm that or not for me. Okay, let me pull that up so you can see it. So yeah, so there it is. This kind of has that texture. You can
Yeah,
kind of
so,
see the texture.
so you can see that's a bit smooth, so that's printed as it is normally, but this bit here is textured, so just an extra feature. So and that design's online for free as well, and I've seen a few people download that.
Yeah.
But problem is, I put all these designs out, and nobody lets me know if they've been placed or not. So
Well,
I saw a comment on your video saying, "Oh, I found that at yeah." I thought, oh, great.
what was the GC of that? Can I follow that? Yeah, and the creator of that other one, green one, reached out to me on there as well. It's like, oh great, I finally get into a video on YouTube, and it's what not to do. I said, no, that's not what I was trying to say. I love that design. It's great. There's different aspects to it, and like I said, I think yours was the first that I've ever seen the quick reset on, and any 3D maze. So, oh, and I forgot that I had pieces. I had some extra pieces because on Thingiverse you had the tester as well.
Yeah,
So if you're trying to figure out the um, the magnets, and I don't have the magnets into this one, but the pieces that it takes. So this is kind of a cutout of where it kind of fits in, and then there's the
everyone's
hole.
machine has
Yep.
different tolerances and
Right.
different material has different tolerances and shrinkages. So I want to make sure that people, before they put a 24-hour print on, they know it's going to work, it's going to fit. So
Right.
I've done similar with the Snacker tag um, coin holders, where I had two different designs, but to make sure that they fitted the coins correctly, I had just a plain circle that people could print in. So I had this is a space helmet for the Snacker tag high and low.
Okay. Yeah.
So you put the tag in the bottom, and once someone redeemed the coin would sit perfectly in there as a little
Oh, that's
holder.
cool.
But just to make sure that the coin could fit in, I just printed a plain circle that would take 10 minutes to print, just to make sure that everyone's tolerances were okay when they printed it.
Great. That's really cool. And I know Cura has this as well, Chad. So Chad's saying one thing I liked about the Prusa slicer is the ironing feature. I use that a lot, and I have seen that in the Prusa as well. Dan is saying I have to try that. I use Cura just because I started with it. I've used Prusa for a couple of things. Dan, correct? Are you talking about the fuzzy skin aspect of it? I think that's what you're talking about. And then Dave says, yes, fuzzy skin in Prusa Slicer as an experimental feature.
Yeah.
But he hasn't tried it. So that's a comment down here. He just hasn't tried it yet. I've seen some really cool designs using that fuzzy feature online, and that's what people have done with it. I really like that acorn like that.
I've seen some people add it to stonework. So you know how bricks aren't completely smooth. I'll add that to make it give it a bit more texture.
Right.
That's the thing is, you can tell something's been 3D printed because everything's nice and smooth. You get a bit more randomness to it, and yeah. So what was a perfectly straight building has now got texture like brick. So I think that would work pretty well with. I've got a building like this. If I added the fuzzy skin to the bottom half, it'd just make it a bit more like a building.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that. So you did that. You said you did that to the bottom half, so it kind of gives it like
I haven't done it yet, but I think
okay.
it worked really well because I've seen how people have used it to make it look like stone.
Right. So it kind of makes it have like that moss on the stone, maybe kind of like
Yeah.
have like an older building. Yeah. Dan's saying fuzzy skin. Yeah. So yeah, that's I haven't tried it yet either. One thing I do like about, and they might have, of course, I know the slicers are basically in competition with each other, anyways. But one thing I like about the Prusa slicer is that I can paint on my supports, so I can actually tell it where I want
Yeah.
my supports literally coming from. When I was using Cura before, I couldn't do that in Cura, and I don't know if they've changed that in recent updates or.
I'm not too sure. I know there's a thing where you can have support blockers and stuff, but then it stopped working for me.
Okay.
Where I'm not sure if something got corrupted, but support blockers just stopped working, and it meant I had to start. I couldn't block support, but I could create support. So I was finding myself, instead of like painting on support, I was having to put little blocks all around where I wanted it. So that feature in Prusa would have been much really helpful to me.
So I have been using Prusa. I've only been using it for I know I started with my Scream canister is when I started because it was taking some pieces 46 hours to print, and it was like, oh, this is killing me.
Yep.
And then when I switched to Prusa, it was a lot faster. I still like Cura. and we were talking earlier, I have a project that I'm working on, and it wasn't printing certain parts of it. And I tried both slicers, seeing if I could pick it up. But I think I'll let you know if we fixed it earlier today after I print some other stuff for CacheFest. But we'll get back to that. But so like you were saying before, it just really matters which one you're comfortable with. I think it's great to experiment. Hey, maybe this one's got some different things. So like adding to your toolkit, hey, this one can do this one can do this, and just trying to figure out maybe which one's better and which one you like better, and what works on one print may not work on the next print. So
I think, and that's the same with printers. Like you're saying, what upgrades do I want to this printer that will make it better for me? So I know that changing to a 0.6mm nozzle is going to have a larger benefit to me than some other upgrades I could do.
Right.
So, because people can't really tell if I'm doing really small details, you can't really tell the difference between a 0.4mm nozzle and a 0.6mm nozzle.
Right.
What I can tell is that to get any kind of strength in a print for a 0.4, I need at least 1.6mm wall, which means it needs to go around 4 times. For a 0.6mm, I can give it a 1.8mm wall, and it only needs to go around 3 times. So I've already saved myself a quarter of the time.
And is that what you usually use? You usually use the 0.6 versus a 0.4?
I use a 0.6mm nozzle normally, and I do a 1.8mm perimeter.
Okay.
That cuts time down a lot compared to a 0.4mm nozzle.
And I love that. That's a great tip. I've always used a 0.4. I have a 0.6. I just haven't used it. That tip may be getting changed soon.
I've used 0.2 as well.
Okay, that would be for the high detail. Oh, let me pull that up.
So that's similar. It's the same design as this. So you got my camera's a bit rubbish, but you can see the windows and the brickwork in something like this little keyring for a Village Hall series here in the UK. But I printed with a 0.2mm nozzle, and with that post box I shared earlier, the red bit was printed in a 0.2mm nozzle, just to get the details in.
And and you're just doing the 0.2 for the detail for it.
So 0.6 in that bit.
0.6 for the outside, 0.2 for the inside. That's I really like that because I know, Dave, I think you always pretty much use a 0.4. Chad is a 0.4. Dan, let me know in the chat because there's a lot of 3D printers, guys. People that print in 3D, not 3D printers, but because our machines don't talk normally unless there's something really bad in the chat. So Dan also, let me pull this up. I have an Ender Pro. The only upgrades I've done is a Capricorn tube and silicone spacers instead of springs. I've seen those silicone spacers. How do those work? I'm just curious. I've upgraded my springs on mine. I've upgraded my bed on mine. I put a BL Touch on it. I've done, let's see here, a dual gear extruder. I've upgraded the hot end. What else have I upgraded? I know there's something else. But yeah, I've upgraded just and I use Octoprint on mine as well. So because I'm not always home, and that way I like checking it, and I can actually look at the video camera. I'm not always running the watch on it, but I can check it whenever I need to and just see what it's doing and look at temperatures and everything. That's why I like the Octoprint. Dan's using a 0.4, but sometimes a 0.6. Been wanting to try them. So Dave is saying only a 0.4, but definitely inspired to try the 0.6 millimeter now. I know.
Yeah, right? You need to tweak slices slightly. So because it's just that tiny bit wider, you need to have a hot end a few degrees hotter because you're putting more material through the nozzle.
Right. Yeah, and so that would mean since you're putting more through, do you have to change your E-steps as well, or is it?
No, yeah. Generally, I slow it down slightly, but I'm not so much that the benefit disappears. So
Okay.
I change to a 0.6 to make it faster, but I slow it down by I think I use 55mm print speeds. I'm not sure what everyone else uses, but I just know that works for me with PETG, and it seems to work. But yeah, I mentioned before before the show, I have a dehydrator, so because I use PETG, there's a problem with stringing, and I spent days trying to investigate what was wrong with my printer. Was the retraction right? Was the E-steps right? I was doing loads of test prints. Nothing I was fixing was helping the stringing. I put it in the oven at 50 degrees for several hours. It got rid of the stringing. So in fact, I wasted days and days and days.
50 degrees C. Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Yes.
So
50 degrees C.
So I'm trying to think what 50 degrees Fahrenheit would be. Dave, you can do the math faster than I can right now. I'd ask Suri. Sorry, making sure my phone didn't go off. But so yeah, and I've seen dehydrators, and I haven't had that issue with my PETG, and I don't think. I mean, I've seen the stringing, which I think we've all have. But with PETG, sorry, I was reading Dan's question for you. Oh, and do you turn off the fans when you print with PETG?
I go 50 or 60% fan. I don't turn them off. So PLA 100%, ABS 0, and PETG about 50-60%. Okay.
What about on bridges? When you're doing the bridges with the PETG, what are you using? Do you run it at 100, depending on the space, so you don't have to use?
No, I don't. I do fan override on supports. So Cura has a setting where, and it only seems, well, back when I had an old version of Cura, it only seemed to become available in PETG, or it only made it visible with PETG. I'm sure I could have found it, but it does a fan override. So when it did supports, it did 100% to make it a bit weaker. So the more cooling there is, the weaker PETG is, and so it got 100% on the supports. So theoretically, it would be easy to remove.
Okay, that's once again, that's another great tip. So run your fans on your supports at 100%, and then the rest of it, you're saying 50 on PETG, 40 to 60.
Yeah. Well, that's how I run it. But that's, again, I'm using a 0.6mm nozzle.
Right.
I don't know what people in environments are. I know that my door is shut, so there's no drafts. It is what 3D printing isn't at the moment. Plug and play, especially with the Ender 3 series where there's no enclosures. It's always going to be what works for me.
Right.
And it could work for other people, but I know that works for me.
Okay. And that's like with a lot of different stuff we do. What works for one person may not work for the other because we're all in different environments. If you're living in Florida, in Miami, your humidity level is through the roof. It's like 3,000%. I've been there. Here it's pretty bad here in Memphis, Charleston. So depending on what your humidity, what different weather changes will be different. Just like when you're cooking a pie or a cake, it says if you're at this elevation, cook at this temperature. It's kind of the same aspect of it. We don't.
It also depends on what you've ordered. Like I said before the show, is I've got a glass bed on both my Ender 3 and my Ender 3 Max. My Ender 3 loves PETG, but doesn't like PLA. But my Ender 3 Max, which theoretically has the same bed surface, doesn't like PETG as much, but likes PLA. And I both clean them down with IPA and make sure everything's clean, so it should be identical surface. But for some reason, they act completely differently.
Very interesting, and that's really, like I said, that's really interesting because I mean, I've printed mostly at PETG. I'm about to start doing some PLA. Thanks, Chad, with some stuff that we're about to do, and I'm going to have to do some experimenting just a little bit just to make sure that the settings are right for my climate and everything in my room. But I've noticed, and I have a flex bed on mine, which I've absolutely loved. And I've tried different ones of the flex beds. I had one, in fact, I ordered 2 of these within a week because the smooth side chipped on both of them. And then it wouldn't even release. It was an Ender flex bed. It was like it wouldn't flex enough to let go. And it was a double-sided. So one side had a texture, one side had the smooth. Not buying it again because both of them, one was on the first print, it cracked and it wouldn't even let go of the print and peeled off. I'm like, well, this just stinks. But I like the ones I found is by TH3D, and their flex beds seem to be really well. And I had the smooth one that lasted for over a year. They're out of stock right now. Otherwise, I'd order another one. But I'm enjoying the texture. Chad Bounce Mount says, I've considered buying a CR10 Max, but have heard you have to make several upgrades to have it work right. Have you heard that?
With Creality, a lot of the times is we're okay out of the box, but to get the best quality, you need to do some upgrades. And I think that's the issue with Creality machines, or just budget machines in general. That's why I was okay with using Ender 3 because I had a background of using the lol spots at the Makerspace, and I had experience in 3D printing.
Right.
But I won't recommend Ender 3s as a beginner printer anymore because a lot of beginners want to just get a print going and get a finished cache at the end of it. So I'd say, Prusa, either the Mini or is it Prusa i3 Mini? You got either of the Prusas are the budget ones, which are still quite a bit more than the Ender 3. I would say is a better machine for a beginner.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit more of an investment, but you're going to get better prints out of the box.
And Dan says Enders out of the box won't compete with Prusa out of the box, but upgrade for the Enders are cheap and easy to get to, and that's true. I mean, within a month, I was upgrading my Ender, just because. I mean, I think the first upgrade I did was the BL Touch because I'm like, I want to make sure that the bed leveling or the tramming, whatever you want to call it, was right, and not have to sit there and worry about it. And I know the Prusas automatically come with auto bed leveling. Some of the higher end Creality machines do as well.
Yes,
there's
a lot of CR6 SE came with a bed leveling, but it came with a load cell. It says it wasn't. I think Prusa used induction probes, and this one had a new novel load cell one, and so it was advertised as having bed leveling, but it was one of the first machines that used a load cell, so it did a bit, but you couldn't rely on it too much. But I don't have any type of bed leveling. I always print with a skirt around my prints, so as long as I know the skirt's being printed, and I use it quite wide and quite far out from my cache, so I know that's been placed well and it seems fairly level, that the print's going to go okay.
Okay. So here's a question. A lot of people that are printing, I've seen several different, since we're talking about bed leveling, and that's usually seems, for those that are starting, seems like the biggest issue that
Yeah.
I've seen in the chat rooms or boards and all that. The question, and this is a huge debate that a lot of people bring up: do you use a piece of paper or do you use something else when you do your
I
leveling
use a
or
piece of paper.
jamming?
I use a piece of paper for a lot of times. I now use a feeler gauge. So that is but it's basically just a strip of metal that has a known thickness. So I'll home the bed,
Okay.
so it thinks what is 0, and then I'll go in and baby step it up to the thickness of the feeler gauge,
Okay.
and then I'll level the bed to that. So I'll 0 it, take it up. If my feeler gauge is 0.4 millimeters, I'll 0 home it and take it up 0.4. Make sure it's level and the feeler gauge goes is okay between the bed and the nozzle. Where the nozzle isn't pushing it down, the feeler gauge can move in and out quite nicely. I know that's level, and then that works for me.
Okay.
And I haven't had to level my bed for quite a few months, and I'll have space of printing loads for a month, and I'll leave it for several months, and I'll go back to it, and it'll be okay.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I know now you're saying your knobs aren't turning at all, or so it's actually staying level all the time.
Pretty much, it might be a bit out, but yeah, I could probably put a print on this evening. It might be a bit out, but it'll still be able to print okay. I know that a lot of people will have to re-level it sometimes after every print, and it's just maybe the concentric nuts haven't been tightened enough, or there's too much tension on the belt, so it's causing it all. It's just been assembled slightly out, slightly not square.
Okay.
So I've taken my printer apart a few times just through one. I didn't build my Ender 3, my little brother did. So when I got that, I took it apart just to transport and made sure it was square when I reassembled it. But where I could tell it was okay. That's the thing is, make sure that everything is square when you get it out of the box.
Right.
If it's not square, then it's not going to be square months down the line.
Right.
Make sure that first print is fine before. And that thing is, a lot of people, oh, that's not working, I need to buy an upgrade to fix it. Maybe try and spend a bit longer trying to work out what the issue was, and that way you might not need that upgrade.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what. Yeah, I think, and if you get a kit, that's one of the things Ender 3 is good, is because you're building it, you put it together. Back when I bought the original Ender 3, you had pretty much put it all together. You understood how a machine worked, and you could see, oh, that's how that works, that's what does that, and if anything goes wrong, I know how to fix it.
Right.
The Ender 3 Max, which is a slightly newer machine, it only came in 2 pieces, so you put it together. And the hot end is different between the Ender 3 and the Ender 3 Max. I have a hard time getting into Ender 3 Max because I didn't put that part together. But I can take the Ender 3 out and change nozzles over really quickly because I put it together and understand how it all works together.
Right. And that's the same thing with the Ender 3 V2. When I got mine, I had to put everything together. It came in a box. I mean, put the arms, the uprights, all of it together. So I understand how everything goes together on that. Oh, so Chad's just saying, having your thing squared and leveled is overrated. LOL. I just want to print something, and that's why there's so many people yelling at people in those in those groups. I think, why is it not doing this? And we're looking at their bed and it's like all scraped from where it tips coming across it, and it's like, because you're trying to print on a 15-degree angle, it's not going to work. I know once I get mine really close, I don't have to adjust mine too much, especially with the BL Touch, because when I have a mine set up, when it goes through, it tests at 25 points on the bed before it ever starts printing.
Yep.
So it kind of will do that little bit of adjustment on the Z-axis as it's going across, but it's very minimal. But I think the best upgrade for mine that I have seen is the dual gear extruder, and
So that helped me a lot.
that one, because one of the things I don't like about the ender on that extruder is that the one that you get on the ender, at least in the 3v2, it's plastic
Yeah.
and it's a single, and I had kept having it slip on me all the time. And so now the dual, the one that I ended up getting originally when they had the dual gear that came out, after time it wore, and it had, you would get machine, it would start filing itself down on the bottom.
Yeah.
The one I have has a washer on there, so it actually, it's free spin, it both not free spins, but it spins and it doesn't have that issue.
I had one of the old ones, and I was like, why isn't it printing? And I looked at it, and it ground itself down, and it was about metal. It came about half a millimeter thick. I was like, oh, that's why it's not working. And
Yeah.
it was so close to snapping in half because it worn down over time.
I found.
One of the, sorry,
I'll have to find that link, and I'll drop that into the chat as well, for the Ender 3s. But that's been like one of the biggest upgrades. And then once you put that, my E-steps, then making the E-steps change on that part, completely night and day on my prints. That, I love that. That was one of my favorite ones. And then also changing out the bed and I got rid of the glass bed. Those are the two big upgrades that I did that I could probably deal without the other ones, but those two are my favorite ones.
Well, one, I had an old Ender 3, so I got a new motherboard just because the old one was so loud. Every time it did a retraction, it would just beep at me because the driver was rubbish. So every time it did a retraction, which at that point was quite a lot. You do a lot of retractions with PETG anyway, and it was just too noisy. So the motherboard. And a weird one is either a large bit of wood or a paving stone. So I have the cheap IKEA tables. That's what my printer sits on. And when it was printing, the entire table was moving. If you get a nice big bit of wood or a paving stone and put that on top of a table and put the printer on top of that, a lot of the vibrations and noise disappear because the printer can't move that mass. So it's like the paving stone was less than £5, if that. I don't know. It was ridiculously cheap. Yeah, just put it underneath the printer and it would stop vibrations. It's one of those.
Wow.
I saw one of the YouTubers said, one of the cheapest and simplest things you can do for a printer is put it on something heavy that won't move.
Yeah, and that's when I have mine on a cart, and when I went back through and reinforced all the sides with wood and drilled into the cart just so it doesn't, because I noticed the first few times I printed on, it's like, wow, that thing's like swaying like it's on the ocean. And so went back and fixed that real quick. And with having a wood shop, I had plenty of scrap wood, so that was really easy. Really, the great tips. I mean, the keeping where you're printing, make sure that that's steady and not moving. What was the other, going to a 0.6 is great. Yeah. I hadn't heard that one. I really like that one, and I think you've convinced DJW House as well to try and experiment with that a little bit, and
also perimeter over infill.
Say that again.
You'll get a stronger print by increasing the perimeter more than you will do increasing the infill.
Okay.
So a lot of people will, I want this part to be really strong. I'll increase the infill to 50%, 100%. In just increasing the wall thickness from 1.6, 1.8 is good, but even just like to 2.4 millimeters, just doing that will make the part so much stronger.
Oh, wow.
So just because infill is great for adding weight and a bit of strength, but just the perimeters add so much more. So that's the first thing I saw someone's posting on Facebook on my cache snap. What was the issue? That you've used a really thin wall, thicken the walls out, and you'll have a lot more success.
Okay. So yeah, I'm about to find I had to pull up the dual extruder, and I just found which one I ordered. I was looking at another one, and that was not it. But I will drop that here in the chat in a few moments. So here, DJW House also says, I added to his printer some braces on my table. It made a big difference in the shake, and a sponge between the table and the wall. So it kind of keeps it from banging into it itself. Like we said, just kind of steady up that there will help with your prints as well. So, all right, Owen, before we jump off here, is there any other kind of tips that you can think of that you have that you can think of right off, and maybe even tell us how, if somebody has a question for you, how they can reach you. And I believe you also do commission work as well, correct?
I do some commission work, yes. So that one, this container was actually commissioned. So yeah, if you want a 3D model or a design, I can do that for you. Mostly it's so this cache was the actual printed cache was charged £7.50.
Okay.
£7.50, and that's large enough for a Bison tube to sit in. Which I know a lot of people say, "Oh, that's too cheap." It's like, well, I want better caches out there. I want better 3D printed caches out there. One of the things is I also want to put design choices to make things maybe not watertight, but have large enough to have a watertight container inside, or small enough to be placed inside a watertight container. It's very hard to get watertight 3D printed parts, just because sometimes layer adhesion between layers makes it hard to be watertight. The material makes it hard to get watertight. Sealing using O-rings or gaskets is hard. So having it be placed in watertight containers or be able to hold watertight containers is, I think, the preferred method.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being on here, hanging out with me here on my workshop Hangout, and going through all this different 3D printing. Once again, I absolutely love it. Love having this conversation. Learned a lot. Going to have to try a 0.6 now tip, and that is going to make these prints a lot stronger. And I think that may actually answer somebody else in here in the chat earlier was mentioning about the bigger caches that they have found always seem to be breaking. And that may be because they're using 8.4 and they're trying to add more infill versus the shell of it. So that may be a great tip on there. I absolutely love that. Don't forget, I've also dropped in the chat the group 3D printing for geocaching is in there. A really great group. If you haven't joined that group, go join that group if you're 3D printing. Get to see a lot of different aspects of it. I'm in there. Bounce, DJW House, Owen, started by Dan Truckenmiller. So probably just about everybody in the chat is probably in that group already. But reach out. There's a lot of good there. If you have questions on your printers, always ask in there as well. Whatever printer you have, there's really great groups out there that you can join, and a lot of them are really nice, and you can get help with different aspects that you're needing as well. I have dropped in the chat the dual extruder that I bought for my Ender 3 V2. So that's a really great extruder, and that one it's not going to grind down that other gear. So there's a washer on that. Real easy to put together. And then I've put some other links in the chat as well, and those are all affiliate links. So whatever you do, those do help the channel a little bit. But I really do appreciate everybody that's been joining today. And Owen, once again, thank you for joining us. And let's hear, it's just a little after 8 o'clock now, your time, I believe.
Yep. So yeah, thanks for having me. Just a quick one. If you can't design caches at the moment, look at Thingiverse, Fangs, or Cults 3D, or to see what's already out there to inspire you, and to just find good 3D files at the moment. So you download them, print caches that have already been designed before designing yourself. And that will show you the pitfalls of other designs. If you print something that's or someone else has designed, think, oh, maybe if that was done this way or that way, and it just inspires you to build better caches.
Right. And on that point, if you're not designing the cache and you download it from Things or you download it from Thingiverse or anywhere you're downloading it from, it's not yours to sell. So don't download it and put it on Etsy or whatever and start selling it as yours. It's not your design, so don't sell that. Let that be the designers that actually sells that, because you're getting it for free. That's not fair to the designer themselves. That's stealing. And so just kind of a little PSA right there for you, Owen, and those that are designing these really great caches. I don't want people stealing your property that way. But
there are sellable designs out there, but a lot of them aren't. So just be careful.
Right.
I've seen my designs put on Etsy, and it's not great.
Right. So once again, thanks for joining us. Really great to have you here with us and going through this, and we will definitely be in touch, Owen. I'm gonna run the close real quick, or the open for the second time, but just kind of stick on, and we'll talk some more here in a second. So thanks for everybody for joining me, and those that are going caching, not going caching, wrong mega event this weekend. Those that are at Texas Challenge and you're watching this later, hey, I hope you've enjoyed it and really do appreciate it. And those that will be on with us on Gadget Talk later this week, or see you there. Cannot wait to see you on Tuesday on Gadget Talk. But for now, we'll see you later. Bye.